Pittsburgh Penguins made it 4 straight wins over the weekend by blitzing the New Jersey Devils on Saturday. Pat and I are going to recap that game, plus discuss the week ahead on this special Marshall Monday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast.
Your Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damping. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Cinnamon for Wet. And ladies and gentlemen, the prodigal son has returned. Jesse Marshall is back for another Marshall Monday. Jesse, as always, man, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule on Mondays. We're going to have to probably move your weekly segment to another day because you've just been so busy lately.
Yeah, you said it. It's good to be back. And well, I'm sad that you'll lose the alliteration abilities that you get out of Marshall Monday, but we'll make up new ones, right?
Hey, we'll figure it out whatever day you want to do. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever. But as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this episode. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So, Jesse, the Penguins made it 4 in a row on Saturday by absolutely blitzing the Devils on home ice 7-3. That is the Penguins' first home win over the Devils in nearly 4 years, and only their second win in their last 11 games against the Devils. They have been flat out owned by this team over the last few years, but it was nice seeing the Penguins get some payback. And I thought they came out like a house on fire. That was the best start they've had since probably the game against Minnesota on that Sunday before. They really did not play that well against Vegas or St. Louis, but they got the finishing and they got the goaltending. And you had both of them in this game as well. The finishing was very much there. Tristan Jarry wasn't as good as his last 3 starts, but he was still fairly good in net. But I felt like the process was more there in this win against the Devils than the previous 3, at least in my opinion. And Jesse, I want to get your thoughts on this because I know some people very much want this team to lose most of their games here down the stretch, get the top 5 pick. But to me, I'm okay with them winning a little bit like this because you're never going to tell professional athletes to intentionally tank. If you go up to Sidney Crosby and say, hey, why don't you go and lose all these games? He's going to tell you to screw off. Like that's not how he is. And Sidney Crosby is 7 points away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's point per game record. I think he's going to do it here unless something weird happens. But by winning games like this, you still create that culture in your locker room that's needed for next season. The players are having fun out there. They're showing all this heart. They're showing all this fight. And are they going to make the playoffs, people? No. I even tweeted over the weekend, do not look at the standings. Do not look at the standings. They are going to drive you nuts if you do. But they're at least playing well. They're getting good goaltending. They're finishing their chances, and they're having a blast out there. I'll always respect that, man. So what are your thoughts on this little winning streak that they've gone over the last week plus?
Don't care. To be honest, I don't care. If they lose, cool. If they win, fine. This impacts nothing other than the standing and caliber of player that you're going to get later on down the line when the draft comes here. I don't know that I agree that. Here's the thing, like there's a misnomer, right? Like we have to discuss, I think, like the open misnomer is like the open misnomer in the discourse on Twitter and amongst, all the Penguins fan base is this act of like intentionality around tanking. There's never going to be a situation where professional players who are playing for contracts,
right,
reputations, and livelihoods are going to not try. The mechanism of tanking, the action of tanking, is one that's taken by a coach and general manager and the lineup that you deploy, right? So just so we're all clear on that, right? There's never been a documented case in the history of the National Hockey League of a team intentionally losing games with good players, right? You've seen teams manipulate their roster to be worse, right? And then organically let those players lose and do nothing about it. But like, I see these conversations and it seems like everybody's like, they need to not try as hard. That's ridiculous. That shouldn't even be, why are we shouldn't be having that conversation, because it's just ridiculous to discuss that. Now, if you want to criticize Kyle Dubas and Mike Sullivan for not, calling up a bunch of young players, throwing them to the wolves and eating a bunch of losses in a row, I guess I'll entertain that, right? Like, we could have that conversation. I just, like, for me, this boat is listing in the ocean and being taken around by the waves, right? Sometimes the waves take it by a beautiful oasis, right? Where people are grilling and barbecuing and having fun. And sometimes the waves take them and it knocks the boat over and fills it up with water and everybody starts choking on it. That's just the way it's going to be for the rest of the year, right? And they may win these games in a row and they might lose every game for the rest of the year organically. Like, we're just along for the ride, right? That is what it is. I'm not going to get jammed up too much one way or another, because unless you're taking Matthew Schaefer or Michael Misa in this draft, which means you have to be picking in the top 2, right? And by the way, let me get this out there too. Finishing 4th worst, right? Yeah, I know people love Porter Martone. I'm partially responsible for that in the hype that I've generated with him. But my point is you don't have as good of a chance to move up to 1 and 2 as you think you do. It doesn't.
The odds are genuinely against them with the way the NHL draft lottery is set up, that they're not going to get that top 2 pick, even if they have the worst record in the league, because it's now intentionally set up because of the Penguins, but we aren't going to talk about that.
They're letting the Oilers off the hook here a little bit.
Yeah, Oilers, for as much success as the Oilers and Penguins have had over the last 40 years in stacking championships, they also are a big reason the NHL draft lottery now exists, but I digress.
Let's be specific. It was the Marc-Andre Fleury trade that did it, right? Because they didn't have the first overall pick that year. They traded to get it, and then that didn't count against them in future selection opportunities. So fair. All fair. Yeah. All is fair in tanking.
But Jesse, you brought up the point that so many have brought up, is that why aren't these young guys in Wilkes-Barre coming up? Why are they playing these veterans? Why didn't they trade everybody away? And that's a whole other discussion for a whole nother day. I think our listeners know where I stand, where I said, let these guys develop, let them win together, and then have them ready to play in the NHL. But player we got to talk about that Hunter and I have talked about quite a bit over the past couple of weeks.
Before we do that, can I say that you're right? Can I just back up what you just said in being correct? Because I know not everyone watches the AHL a lot, right? Like, I get that. To paint a picture for you, like, Hershey, okay, is really good and trying to win, and they've invested in winning. The Penguins have done the same thing, but are behind Hershey in the process of that.
Right.
Like, it wasn't really until Kyle Dubas got here that anyone cared about that at all, right? Wilkes-Barre's 6 points behind Hershey in the standings for, like, number 1 overall in the Atlantic, right? Like, really great. That's good. And there's a special thing down there right now. Like, I think they have a lot of good things happening in multiple areas of the ice. Like, them going on a really deep Calder run, huge, right? Like, huge. And 10 times out of 10, I'll take Ville Koivunen, McGroarty, all those guys down there, like, gelling together and having that experience over playing up here with whatever this thing is, right? So I think, like, that, I just wanted to back you up that, like, you're correct, and I don't think people in general honestly appreciate how good Wilkes-Barre is, right? Like, they are that's a good team that would be in second place in almost every single division in the American Hockey League.
And look how much fun they're also having down there too. Like, you can tell every time, one of those guys scores a goal, they all get amped, especially on the bench, on the ice. Like, they're forming, so many bonds down there. And
Hunter, for me personally, and I've been around for a long time. Yeah. I haven't seen it like this since, like, the Colby Armstrong era of Wilkes-Barre. Okay. Right? Like, that's the same vibe you had when it was, like, Eric Christensen, Colby Armstrong, Ryan Whitney, like, all those really young players that you knew were going to be good one day in some effect, right? The Max Talbots of the world, Matt Murleys of the world, right? Like, that, that was back when they were filming basically, like, documentaries, right? Like, office style documentaries, and, like, having fun with it. And, like, I don't know that I've really, like, caught that vibe. Like, from that point forward, Wilkes-Barre was a transitional win now like environment, right? Where it was gutted, everything was gone. They were trying to get Stanley Cups. The players who went there didn't spend a whole lot of time there, right? They didn't have that time to build that culture. So anyway, I cut you off, but I felt like your point was so important. I needed to emphasize it had been that long. We're going back to like 2005 now. Like since we've like, I think you've had that sort of like same vibe.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And not to steal Pat's thunder there, because we are bringing up Rutger McGroarty right now. He's been on fire as of late. Jesse, you were talking about it before we started recording. He's been great all season. You know, I've been trying to watch as many AHL games as I can in Wilkes-Barre this year, just because they are a ton of fun to watch. He just wasn't producing at the beginning of the season because the puck wasn't going into the back of the net. He's been driving play all year, but he's been especially rewarded over the last month. His last 15 games, 8 goals, 17 points during that time. Ville Koivunen, he's at around a point per game this year. He continues to be great. I think both these players are going to be on the Penguins roster as soon as next season. And Jesse, we still got to bring him up too. Your son, Sergei Murashov, he continues to light up Wilkes-Barre now. 9-0, 2.41 goals against average, 921 save percentage. He's now also tied Matt Murray for the longest winning streak by a rookie goaltender in Wilkes-Barre Penguins history. Jesse, your thoughts on what these players are doing down in Wilkes-Barre this year?
Yeah, I'm going to do an end of the year review of Rutger McGroarty's season. And when you watch, it'll probably be about 18 minutes long. And when you watch the first 14 minutes, you're going to want to pull your hair out of your head. And you're going to say, like, how in the hell possible that he doesn't have more points? Like, what is going on? But that's the nature of the beast, man. Like, that's just the way hockey is. You know, regression comes and it goes, and it hits people in a variety of ways. I think what's important for me, timing. I think his NHL timing has grown and has enhanced his ability to make quick reads, just push a puck off in a tic-tac-toe style play off a rush, you know, participate at a higher IQ level in the offensive zone. Off the charts, been really good this year. Individual chance creation, like what happens from the time Rutger McGroarty first touches the puck to the time he is done with it, whether that's via shot, goal, pass, whatever. Like skill treeing, for lack of a better word, has been so much better than it was. And it wasn't bad earlier in the year, right? It was raw. I don't know that like you saw him run a couple plays together to get it to gain possession and keep a puck alive, right? Like he was sort of like a passenger at times, I think at that level. That's not the case right now. And that's discernibly changed. Foot speed, great. Like everyone wants to talk about skating. I do not have a concern. Like I want to be real clear, like not concerned about it. He is not fast. Like, okay, great. Like we got it. Like, but you know, the edge work, the stuff that happens inside of the phone booth, to quote the Mike Lang phrase, right? That stuff that's meta, small space, right? From a stop, that's what's improved, right? His top speed, I don't think is really tangibly, it's that agility and what happens in those first couple steps that is the difference maker for me. And he looks really confident. He just looks like he knows he has size and he's functionally using it to his advantage now. The work that he's doing in the offensive zone is not singular in focus. It's multifaceted stuff, right? Sometimes it's his hands. Sometimes it's his drive to the net. Sometimes it's his work in the boards and puck retrieval. Sometimes it's his playmaking and his vision. It's multifaceted. It's more of the bill of goods you were sold when he was a prospect. Now, I'm not coming in here and saying that I think he's going to go up on the top line and score 30 next year. I think that there will be points next year when he does play in the NHL where there will be another adjustment. And then there will probably be a time where maybe he's got to get over that initial adrenaline rush anyway. You get that jump. Everybody looks good on game one. And you settle in and it comes a reality. That adrenaline wears off. Like I think there could be an adjustment there. But I think that he's a guy you are very comfortable deploying, maybe on a second line as a wing. Worst case scenario, third line as a wing right out of the gate, right? You want to deploy him as a wing. You want to give him easier minutes. Cool. I think he could play in the top 6. I've seen that level of IQ from him this year to make me comfortable with feeling that way. Like, I don't know that I would have said that after camp this year, right? So nobody should be complaining about anything. And I know like people are like, you know, living in this Braden Yeager world, right? I don't think Yeager's had a particularly impressive year. I don't think his scoring clip is that impressive when you consider his age. And I don't think he's going to play in the NHL next year. So at worst, and I'm not knocking Braden Yeager, I just think he is what he was when we traded him, which is a player who's not quite as good as Rutger McGroarty. And you got the player ultimately that's closer to the NHL. So I think Kyle Dubas, like both these teams will be fine. They're both going to have a player that will play in the NHL. But I think like we're getting a little too lost in the sauce on that commentary and discourse, considering these players are so far apart from each other and where they are in their development, right? Like if we want to have that conversation, let's wait 5 years and then we'll do it, right? But either way, I think they got what they wanted, and at a bigger size-based prospect who can play in that Penguin style of needing to like think quickly and be there with Sidney Crosby and Malkin as they do these crazy things that they do, and somebody who's pretty close to the league. So I'm excited to get the video out there because, again, I think like it was out of sight, out of mind. He wasn't scoring a lot. People, I think, assumed, and I don't blame them for this, that he wasn't playing well because the points weren't there. He was playing pretty well, and he's only gotten better. And I'm glad that the regression wave like is hitting him, now, right? Because now he's going into the postseason hot. Right? I'd rather that than the other way around, where he comes into the AHL, lights the world on fire, and then peters out at the end of the year. Regression comes for everyone, folks. It is an unescapable reality of life. I'd rather have it early and get it out of the way than be handcuffed in the playoffs.
Before we get back to our wonderful conversation with Jesse Marshall for this edition of Marshall Monday, we have to tell you about a couple of our sponsors. The first one being Factor. Eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you can get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or keto. I love how Factor keeps you on track with healthy, delicious meals without the time-consuming prep. And for example, the creamy Parmesan chicken and the Korean beef bowl, they are some of my favorites. They taste homemade, but they take literally no effort. They also offer smoothies, breakfast, and snacks, so you can always have something good ready to go. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. And we're not done. We still got to tell you about our last sponsor, and that is Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I am stacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Back here on another Marshall Monday, and Jesse, we have to talk about your adult Russian son, Sergei Murashov, who continues to just light up the AHL after lighting up the ECHL in their win just yesterday on Sunday over the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. He improves to 9-0-0, ninth consecutive win, ties Matt Murray for the longest rookie winning streak. And we have gone over the numbers ad nauseum. They're unbelievable. But aside from the numbers, digging into them, what is it about Murashov that's making him so successful so far at both the ECHL and AHL level?
Well, so number one is just raw speed and athleticism. That's like number one. That is what everything in his game is based on completely. He is exceptionally fast, almost unbeatable low because his pad speed is so quick. I think he's got a great underrated blocker. He gets a lot of sticks on things from far out and in close. And then there's this sort of like bubble he's in, right? Where like he is unaffected by whatever is happening around him. Like the chaos, the more chaotic the situation is, the better he is. Like, I think he thrives in those situations because once things break down and you get to like second, third, fourth chances, methodology goes out the window and it becomes this instinctual, like survivalistic means of net minding where like you're not watching a man that has like a book taught method. You're watching somebody who's just doing what comes naturally to them really fast. And I think also processing speed and like being able to read plays and understand plays and keep his eye on pucks in unconventional in unconventional situations, it's just through the roof. So I think these are situations where other goaltenders, like, they hate to be in those situations. They struggle, they flounder, and he thrives. The stuff that he gets beat on is clean. Like, it's gonna beat a lot. It's gonna beat everybody, you know. Like, it's not like I haven't, found like that deficiency that exists. I mean, it's rebound. I keep saying it. It's rebound control. But I told you guys before the show started, I am getting to the point where I no longer care. Like, if understanding that he puts himself in a lot of bad scenarios with regards to his rebound control, it's not hurting him, right? Like, he's not suffering as a result of this. So like, how long am I going to cling to it as being a problem, I guess, is my question. I mean, it's definitely unrefined and he does kick stuff out, but like at the same time, what are we going to begrudge him for making the save? Right? Like part of the reason why it's kicking out is because it was a hard save. And his concern is I need to make the save, not be paying necessarily attention to where this puck's going afterwards. And you kind of got to respect that. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's it. Like if you're looking for minuses, I don't have a lot to give you. He's not very big. Don't care. Hasn't bothered him yet. Hasn't made a difference anywhere he's played. Like when you're as fast as he is, like, and you have good extremities, that height no longer really like makes that much of a difference, And again, if I had a dime for every time I saw him get a stick on something, I'd have like $1.70, and that's not a lot, but it's, you know what I mean? It is a lot when you think about it. Like these aren't things you see goaltenders do all the time. So I'm kind of like, I'm at the point, guy, where I'm comfortable saying like, there's no rug here, right? Like, I know there was like the tendency is like to wait for like, what's the catch? I don't have one. I'm not an expert on goaltending. I'll say that till the cows come home. Like, I don't know I am not a classically trained goaltender. Like, I didn't even like playing goal for fun, to like pick up. Like, it was like too much work. So I don't, I'm speaking like just from my limited source of like reading and knowledge that I do have, but like, I don't know. I feel like, how many times is this a coincidence? Like how long, like I understand regression. Like we just talked about it and goalies get hot, goalies get cold, but like, this has been you guys don't get hot all year across multiple leagues accidentally. You know what I mean? Like, and it'd be one thing if like guys were shooting pucks off the back of his skull when he was slopping around on the ground, but like, no, he's making saves, right? Like guys are putting shots to where they think the open net is. And then like, whoop, here he shows up out of nowhere, like surprise, So I don't view this as accidental. That's my point, right? I don't view this as like the boon of some good luck streak, because he's got a horseshoe in his pad. Like, it's just, he's a good goalie and he's a fast goalie. And I think if you're a shooter too, guys, like seeing someone that small is like jarring, right? I mean, I think like you see this net available to you, right? That or these spaces available to you that I think guys are shooting in unconventional ways against him just based off of like how compact he is. And that sort of feeds into what he wants. Because if you go low post, that's like the buzzing of flies to him, to quote Ghostbusters. Like, he does not care about that. So, yeah, I think it's all in all is just a very interesting situation that, I think if you were sitting at home wondering, like, should I get hype about this? Yes. Yeah. Now's the time. Like, go ahead. Green light for hype. Like, go for it. Like, jump on the train, plenty of room.
And going off that, when do you think he could be ready? Halfway through next season, Jesse? Does he need another full season in the AHL before being ready? Just curious.
That's a good question. Let's see how the playoffs go.
Fair, yeah. I'm curious to see.
Like, let's see how the Calder Cup playoffs goes. Look, if he shows up next year and is lights out in camp, has a great run, they don't even need to win the Calder Cup. has a good, solid run in the American Hockey League, shows up to camp and is lights out, you have a really difficult decision to make. You have a really difficult decision to make because I get it. You don't want to derail it. Like, that's really important. And we have seen goalies get derailed. Like, we have seen goalies go too early and get derailed. Like, you know, the risk analysis will be insane on that, I'm sure. But I think you got to consider at least giving them a run, you know, giving them a look at least once or twice to see what you got. I mean, you're not, you know, that's not going to kill anybody, right?
No, I mean, I don't think so. And I look at it this way, is I, like we talked about it a little bit in the first segment. I am, and so are you, very pro, like, listen, we don't need to spoil these guys yet because they got a good thing brewing in Wilkes-Barre. They're playing well. They're gelling together. That's something that, yeah, it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but it shows up when they eventually come up to the NHL because they've done it together. When I look at the goalies, I said the same thing in a way about Blomqvist when he went back down. Everybody was like, oh, they're just trying to tank now. They're bringing Jari back up. It was like, no, there's no reason to leave Blomqvist here because it's a poor defensive team. He's a highly touted goaltending prospect. Nothing is going to serve his development by playing behind a team like that. In fact, it'll probably spoil it. But like you said, they go on a solid run in the Calder Cup playoffs. They don't even have to win, but they go on a solid run. He's the backbone of it, shows up to camp, does really well. The risk analysis to me has to be, does he have anything left to prove? And if that run is as good as we think it is, the next thing to prove is, can you do it with the big club?
Yeah. I'll say this too. If the takeaway from a hockey ops perspective is that he needs to improve his rebound control, that is not something that happens overnight. And I would be prepared to wait a little longer. Like, then, Hunter, we get into, I think, your time frame, like halfway, 3/4 mark. You know, something strikes me, gentlemen, is one thinking that this goaltending situation they're in is not going to solve itself overnight. So I think going into next year, we may be you know, still looking for solutions. And if that's the case, you know, they'll be looking within for them, just like they did this season. And yeah.
Especially, Jesse, not with Tristan Jarry going 931 in his last 4 starts, remembering how to play goal again somehow, I guess.
But I will.
He turns into prime LeBron, as I've said in the last couple of shows.
I will caution everyone that there was a time not that long ago. In fact, it ironically enough coincided with when Tristan Jarry went down, when people on Twitter were saying, oh, wow, like, Ned looks really good right now and is playing out of his mind. Maybe we should give him the net neck. And like, look what happened. He's breaking his stick off the glass and screaming at everyone after his play game. Because this is what these guys do, right? Like, we are just on the Thunderbolt right now. And sometimes the Thunderbolt goes up and sometimes it goes down. And right now we're at the top. It's going to go back down. Like, you can enjoy it now if you want, but this is not like, we've not solved anything here. This is not like he didn't go down there and find himself as a goaltender. Like, that's not what happened. It at times was not pretty at all. So I think, like, you know, it's just, yeah. Well, next year is going to be really interesting with that whole situation because Philip Larson still exists. And I still think that Philip Larson's very good. I don't think that he is the pedigree and I don't think he looks as good as Murashov does. I'll be very clear about that. But who do you know? You don't even know what we have in that, right? Like, what's going on there too? And, you know, all fun questions that we should hopefully get answers to soon.
Yeah, and I think they're going to take 3 goalies into the playoffs at this rate. I mean, they could, in theory, have Murashov for the ECHL playoffs, but as of right now, I think they're just going to take 3 goalies in the playoffs, and that's probably their best move. Like Blomqvist, he's shown an ability to play well for the most part down there. I know his last NHL stint didn't go that well, but he's still down there. Philip Larson has been outstanding this year, Jesse. Mm-hmm. Same with Murashov. So they will have no shortage of options in the playoffs. I'm curious to see how the coaching staff, what they do with that, because it's going to be a tough call either way.
Health will be a part of it too, right?
Yeah.
Larson's been hurt at times this season. Right. You know, like Blomqvist is obviously not playing now, so we'll have to see like what the availability looks like. But there's going to be some difficult decisions to make for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. But I think that'll do it for this second segment and this Marshall Monday 2 segments, because Pat and I are going to fully recap this game against the Devils in the final segment and get you all set for the 2 games this week against the Islanders and the Blue Jackets. But Jesse, before we get to break, do you have anything to plug coming up this week?
Posted a mix of Jake O'Brien today. So that's out on YouTube now. It's got a lot of real poop your pants moments in it. It's if you like just dangle fests. This is like Rob Shrimp level dangle fest, but in real games. So you get that. And then I have I lost my entire Anton Frondel. I have to start all over my screen editing software. I ate it alive and spit it out in 10 frames per second. So Frondel part 2.0 will be out, and then the other one I got coming soon is Rade Murka. So I'm finishing that one up as well. I'm trying to go 32 mixtapes this year. One for everybody in the first that I have as a first rounder. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Well, we'll be waiting for those on social media. And Jesse, until next time, hopefully next week, thank you so much for coming on. Pretty long episode today so far. Hopefully it's probably going to be around 40 to 45 minutes until Pat and I are done recapping this game against the Devils and getting everyone set for this week. But Jesse, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, and again, that'll do it for the second segment of today's show. Coming up to end the show, Pat and I are finally going to fully recap this game against the Devils. We touched on it a little bit during that first segment, getting Jesse's thoughts on everything that's gone on this past weekend and over the last week. But Pat and I are going to go into who really stood out from this game against the Devils, and then again, look at the week ahead. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about our last sponsor, and that is Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where the heck did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in just one place, so you stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save a lot more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we're back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dam. So, Pat, this is going to be pretty rapid fire here. I think our overlord's going to be upset with how long our episode already is at 31 minutes. But, hey, again, we're going to try to go as quick as we can with this recap of the Devils game. And I want to start here once again with Connor Timmins, another tremendous effort from him. If you look at his underlyings from natural stature, I have it in my notes today, he continues to light it up. Very small sample, about 46 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time. But when he is on the ice, the Penguins have 60% of the shot attempts, 6 goals for, no goals against, 20 scoring chances for, 12 scoring chances against, 7 high danger chances for, 4 high danger chances against, and a 66% expected goal share. He continues to not only drive offense, he is playing lights out in his own end, very much a Ben Lovejoy type of player. It is only 4 games, but he's looking like a very great option right now heading into next year as someone who can eat up those third pairing minutes. I thought he was great. And you know what? Shout out to Connor Dewar as well. His underlying numbers coming into the Penguins were not good. He was honestly not having a good year counting stats-wise with Toronto either, but he's a feisty little fella. He loves going to the net. He forechecks hard. And he's being rewarded in these last few games. I really like both of the new guys' efforts right now.
Yeah, early returns are very good on both of them. I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse and say that Kyle Dubas won this deal and got some absolute gems, because very similar to what Jesse was saying in a different way about Rutger McGroarty, in that kind of adrenaline rush of new team, new situation, all of that can wear off before you know it. And it's been 4 games, but in those 4 games, they have been very solid. And I think this is where something like the analytics and the underlying numbers will provide us a little bit of a guide. It shows us that they can continue this, that the mechanics are there, that the process is there for them to continue this. Now, like all things, they could drop off, but Saturday was just another data point in the fact that these two guys seem to be seamless fits.
100%. And, going off that, another player who's been a great fit for a lot of this season, Philip Tomasino, gets another goal in this game. Throwback to when Barry Trotz basically gave him away for free, as Kyle Dubas has just been slapping him in the face all year with all these trades that they've made. I don't know why Barry Trotz continues to trade with Kyle Dubas, but hey, if I'm Kyle, I continue to call Barry because I don't think Barry is very good at this. But Tomasino gets another goal. Rickard Rakell, Pat, gets his 31st goal. And Sidney Crosby, as I mentioned during the first segment, 7 points away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's point per game record. 7 more points. He will have 20 consecutive seasons of a point per game. And again, assuming nothing weird happens, he is going to get it. He continues to play really well. And Tristan Jarry, man, another fantastic start. He's going to get the next start on Tuesday against the Islanders. It wasn't as good as the previous 3 were, but he still made a lot of really big, timely saves throughout. Do you know what his cumulative save percentage is these last 4 games?
You, I believe, said it to Jesse. It's 934, if I'm correct.
Very close. 931. And the Penguins' shooting percentage these last 4 games, 20.5%. You know what? It's always good when you figure out how to finish your chances and get good goaltending. Great recipe for success, isn't it?
Yeah, and I agree. He wasn't as good as he has been recently in this 4th game against the Devils, but at the same time, very similarly to some of the other games in this stretch, there weren't any goals that you really went, oh man, he's got to have that. Like they were hard-earned goals by the Devils, or they were on the power play. So you can't fully put them on the shoulders of the goaltender. He was solid again. As for Tomasino, man, 1 goal away from his career high of 11, which he had in 21-22. Now he's not coming all that close to his career high in points, which was that same season when he had 32. But again, if this is what you're going to get out of him, 15-ish in that range kind of goals, you found yourself a good middle 6 forward for next to nothing. He's still pretty young. He's still only 23, so there is room to grow, but I've liked his game a whole hell of a lot since he became a Penguin. And the longer he plays, the more confidence he develops. I think Dubas, I feel a little more confident saying it about Tomasino. I think Dubas found himself a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, I think so too. And I thought Erik Karlsson was marvelous in this game. What a piss missile, by the way, to make it 5-3 and put the game away late in the 3rd period. It looked like for a time we were going to get a classic Penguins loss here. Big lead. It gets too close, eventually gets tied, and the Penguins end up losing either late in the 3rd period or in overtime or a shootout. Wasn't the case with this one. Karlsson with a big time power play goal. Again, what a shot there. But I will say, man, penalty kill, it was rough once again. I even tweeted during those 2 double minors, I wasn't that mad about them because I want the PK to get work. Like this unit badly needs work right now, but they're just not executing even the simple things. And it's
I think it's still definitely a concern. It's not fixed. It's not even really getting better. But I will give this point. I'll put these 2 points up.
Yeah.
They went 4 for 6 in kills. The Devils get 2 power play goals. The problem is they get 2 power play goals that put them right back in the game.
Exactly.
So when you look at the top line numbers, they didn't do half a bad job. But then you look at the context of it, and they get a power play goal to make it 4-2, and then they get a power play goal to make it 4-3. Those are 2 moments when you need your PK to step up and blunt that momentum from New Jersey, and they didn't. Luckily, Karlsson answers right back on the power play for the Penguins, and then Connor Dewar gets the empty netter. Kevin Hayes gets an absolutely laughable goal to make it 7-3. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's exactly what we have been saying about this team. They may not be very good. They may not be playoff bound, but damn it, they are fighting.
Yeah, they're showing the heart. They're showing their pride. And it's nice seeing them go on this 4-game winning streak. Again, I know some people out there want them to just lose out. Players aren't wired that way. They never will be. And they're having some fun out there, at least to end the season. I will say, Pat, it reminds me a little bit of what happened at the end of last season when they went on that pretty big run to almost get in the playoffs, but we're still not even close to where that was, at least going into April, because Pat, like, they were just lighting everyone up at that time. Yeah, it's nice. They've won 4 in a row, but as I tweeted people, do not check the standings. Do not check the standings. Oh, it may seem like they're a little bit closer to the playoff picture, but look at the games in hand all these teams have, Pat. The Rangers, Blue Jackets, heck, even the Islanders, for example, who are just ahead of them. Montreal, of course, Columbus, who the Penguins will see this week. The games in hand, that screws up that theory. So
yeah,
again,
and we'll talk more about the games themselves because we're running long here. We'll talk about the week ahead probably tomorrow in our preview episode, but I'll just end with this. Here's how we're going to tell if this is a mirage, which I think most of us believe, or if this team has maybe found a little bit of something. The next 2 weeks are going to be very difficult because Islanders, Columbus, Florida, Tampa, Sabres, and then Ottawa. Like, those are all pretty solid teams right now, or at the very least teams that are fighting to get into the playoffs. And if they can scratch and claw a few wins out, again, I'm not going to say they're back. I'm not going to say things are figured out, but you scrape together some wins against them, we can have a little bit deeper of a conversation.
I think that's fair. This week, the Penguins will see the Islanders on Tuesday, and then they'll end this 5-game homestand. They're already 3-0 on this 5-game homestand, but they'll end their homestand against the Blue Jackets, who, in my opinion, are the best story in the NHL this year. And honestly, I do hope they make the playoffs, because I think it would be an even greater story if they got in and played some really good hockey against probably the Washington Capitals, if I had to guess. And one last thing before we end here, I am concerned about the Devils for the rest of the season. They did not play well in that game, and I think they're going to be a quick out, especially without Jack Hughes. And if they don't get Dougie Hamilton back for the playoffs, he's going to be out for the rest of the regular season. But if he is not ready for the first round, I am deeply concerned about them, because I think it looks like right now they're going to be in that 2-3 matchup in the Metro. I think Carolina, even though I don't trust the Hurricanes in the playoffs, I think Carolina might boat race them. And it's just, Penguins kicked the Devils' butts in that game, which was nice to see. But Pat and I will be back with another show for you all on Tuesday to preview this game against the Islanders. It will be the 4th and final meeting against the Islanders. The Penguins will look to play. Spoiler, as the Islanders are still kind of sniffing around one of those wild card spots as well. Again, they're kind of like cockroaches. They never die at this rate. And then we'll recap that game for you all on Wednesday, and then get you all set for Friday's game against the Blue Jackets. So for Patrick Damp, I'm Hunter Hodes. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Tuesday.